Hi, welcome to the Bonsai Stuff Podcast. Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. And thank you very much for listening in. Appreciate the company. This episode of the podcast, we're going to talk about a few different things. It's going to sound like a bit of a tough one because in one hand I'm going to be telling you to do something and on the other hand I'm going to tell you not to do something. So we're going to talk about the paralysis of indecision versus the health check of your bonsai. And it's weird weather at the moment, isn't it? One part of the country we've got people putting up beautiful shade cloth structures. Other parts I've got messages coming through about some severe frost damage on trees, even something like a cedar. It was so cold that the new growth was burnt on a cedar. And other states we've got overwatering issues where there's starting to be some discoloration of the leaf, some lack of vigour and really starting to impact. So it's very different right the way across this beautiful country of ours, but that is springtime in Australia. It's what we deal with every year, on and on and on it goes. So it's just a matter of making sure that you're working to your environment, as I talked about previously, making sure that you're not checking the calendar, you're more working to the environment that the trees are kept in. It's just a reminder to me every day I watch the weather forecast or I get messages come through. It just reminds me that we just need to be extremely vigilant and make sure that we're always doing the right thing by our trees. So hopefully your yard is looking quite nice. I know that I talk about being prepared for summer quite a lot, and yep, sure, watering system talk is going to happen. Been installing a few of them lately, one monstrous one, but it's definitely time now to make sure that you're spot on with what you want to protect and what your plans are for summer. It's a nice time around the year to have a break, to get to the beach, to see family, to get away, to unplug for a little while. It is beautiful, but it also means that something needs to be in place to ensure that your bonsai don't take second place, because it's when the most damage is done. And as I said, watering can just be a nightmare at times. You know, I got caught out this week. Wisteria that I thought a few days it was fine, no problems. You know, didn't need to water because we've had some rain in Melbourne. It's been wet. It's also been windy, which you know how much I love the wind. And went out, had a look, and all of a sudden I've got dry leaves on a few branches on this wisteria. It's like, how does that happen? I pride myself on checking the yard multiple times a day. It still slips through. So please don't feel bad if you've been caught out. It's just, like I said earlier, it's just that time of the year where we seem to cop it. But anyway, let's get into this episode of the podcast where we're going to talk about the fear of doing something. It often leads to the complete opposite, where you do absolutely nothing, and there's a massive downside to that. So let's have a chat about that. Okay, so we're right at the last part of our calendar spring period, which based on temperatures and weather that I've been experiencing where I'm based, it sort of feels like spring's just getting started. We're just starting to get some warm weather now. So it's unusual to talk about different parts of Australia and what they're going through, heat waves to lots of wet, cold period, where I've still been having the heater on at night. It's been that bloody cold overnight. So it's an unusual scenario, but it happens every year. And trying to make this a generic sort of podcast for all of us in Australia, it can be sometimes a little bit tricky. But about now is a good time to have a look at your trees before we do get to that hot part, and make sure that they're ready to take on what comes next. And part of that process for me is to make sure that on, say, my deciduous or even some of my natives, get in and give them a haircut so that new foliage is removed and I'm back to older, harder, more protected foliage on those trees. So they're not going to be burnt, they're not going to be damaged by the extremes of heat and, you know, in say a month or two's time. I want to make sure that I'm on top of it now. And also, you know, we're based, it's a nice time to wrap up that native repotting time as well. The window for me is sort of closed. So if you've got any Australian natives around Melbourne, I'd reckon you've probably got about another week based on the forecast before we start ramping things up. And there's about a week left of of the spring period. So now's a good time to give your trees a bit of a haircut and work on them. But what I see a lot and what I hear a lot and what I get with messages is I just don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I'm sort of at a point where I know I've got to do something. This thing looks like a big shaggy mess, but I don't know exactly what it is I've got to do. So if I do something and it's wrong, then there's an impact to that, and I'm going to set the tree backwards. So I've got to be very careful about doing the wrong thing. And for me, my approach always, and my encouragement to anyone at all in the bonsai world, is doing something that's wrong or slightly wrong is far better than doing nothing. The do nothing approach magnifies any issue that you've got on a tree and makes it something that's going to become a drastic, a severe, have a long-term impact on the tree's structure, because just leaving things grow, let's talk about that. You let things just grow, it becomes big bougie mess. You've got all this growth that's shot out. The silhouette is just enormous, and it's continuing to grow and push and push and push and get longer and longer. So your branches, as they get longer, as you know, they get thicker. Once they get thicker, they start getting coarser. Too long, too thick, too coarse. Basic approach, it's got to go. So sooner or later, those branches that you're letting just grow are going to get too thick and too coarse. So therefore, it's going to destroy the structure and it's going to come out of play. And I see it a lot where trees are sort of cut back. They're allowed to just grow, in any direction with no structure, no plan in place. And I love my plans. But there's no plan in place, so the tree's just allowed to grow. And that means that next time the tree comes onto the bench, be it 6, 12 months, whatever it is, the tree, you've got to get back in there and go, okay, so what was I looking to do again? All right, I was building the trunk. All right, so now I've built the trunk, but I've got all these branches that are all coming from the same spot, or I've got a ring of branches, or I've got this really big knuckle on the trunk now, so I've got reverse taper on my tree. And it's all these things that you look at and go, well, by letting it just go, I've now got an issue that I cannot change. Now, the tree's top half of the trunk is now thicker than the lower half, whereas last time that you worked on the tree, if you'd gone through and said, okay, I'm going to cut this thing back and I'm going to have a plan. My plan is to develop some sacrifice branches in key areas because I still want to develop the trunk, for instance, or I'm going to go through and let this shoot for a month. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to do branch selection. I'm going to look through at everything that's popped out around this tree, and I'm going to go, okay, I pick this branch, that branch, that branch, that branch. So doing nothing and letting 5 or 10 branches come out of one area is far worse than going through and picking one of those branches, and it maybe isn't in exactly the ideal position, but at least it's only one branch you've got to deal with. And it that swelling, that knuckling, that reverse taper that you're going to get is not going to happen because you've gone through and you've made a selection of one branch. And I can guarantee you that you will look back on that branch and you won't go, actually, there was a bud that was 3 millimeters over from that might have been a better choice. Oh, geez, I wonder what the tree would look like if I just left that one bud, instead of coming through and cutting this one and selecting that one, and the tree would have been. But you won't do it. You'll just grab that branch and you'll go, all right, so from now on, you are my key branch, and I'm going to develop you. And maybe the front of the tree angle changes slightly. Maybe it rotates a little bit. Maybe it tilts a little. Whatever it is, you can deal with things like that. You can manage those sort of adjustments that you need to make with the tree's design. So the paralysis that you get by doing nothing will have a massive implication on the future of the tree. And I encourage you to get your scissors out and your branch cutters and make a decision. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to be a decision. Now, as I said at the start of the introduction of this podcast, it's gonna feel like I'm playing both sides of the coin, and I definitely am, because there's times when you just need to leave your bonsai alone, where you need to let it be. You need to not touch it, not cut it, and this is probably as important as doing something rather than nothing. It's the health assessment of your tree. It's priority one for me. Absolutely. The health assessment of my trees overrules anything else I have in my little squirrel brain about what I'm trying to achieve with my trees, or what my objectives are with that tree, and what my goals are and what my plan says. I get a piece of paper and I say, okay, this tree I'm going to come in, I'm going to do this, I'm going to cut these branches off, I'm going to get back to a single branch, and I'm going to wire it, then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to prune back, and I'm going to start secondary branching, and from secondary branching I'm going to start working on ramification, and I'm going to on and on and on the plan goes. But the first thing that I do, honest to God, the very first thing that I do before I even pick the tree up off the bench to bring it into the workshop is my health assessment. And whenever I look at a customer's tree, whenever I have a tree in a workshop, whenever I get asked my opinion on something via a message or an email or whatever it is, the very first thing that I'll do is I'll start the health assessment. I'll have a look at it and go, does that tree look as strong as what it possibly could? All right, so let's talk a little bit. When was it repotted? What's your fertilizing regime been like? Watering. Have you had any issues? Have you had dieback? Let's go through the scenario. Let's spitball this thing and put together a bit of a history on it, rather than saying, should I cut the apex off and go to this branch? Or what about the direction of this? Should I take it to the right rather than the left, or should I go left rather than right? That's all well and good, and they're decisions that we have to make. But if you're not confident, if your tree cannot take what you're about to do with it, then it's a complete waste of time. Your plan goes out the window based on the health assessment of the tree. It may be that you need to change the plan, like hit a pause on it for whatever reason and go, okay, well, rather than pruning, my approach to this is going to be, I need to look at the roots. I need to look at what's happening below. Is it too dense? Has it missed repotting? Is it a newly acquired tree that you've got in the collection? How do I get it from right now up until I can actually work on this thing? Is it a 3-month task? Is it a 6-month? Is it a 12-month? Like what do you have to do to get this tree to fighting weight, to make sure that it's going to excel? Its growth rate's going to accelerate, and the tree's going to excel based on what you do to it, as opposed to suddenly being set back and go, well, you know what you've just done to me, that pruning, I'm now going to let some branches die. You might not see it for 6 months. Like it'll be autumn before you start seeing branch die back on this tree, but it's going to happen. Or you know what, I'm going to get so weak that pests are going to become a real major issue for this tree and how it develops. Or you know what, those fungal issues that have been hanging around that I've been fighting off myself, I can't do it anymore. Like I just don't have enough in the tank. And these are things that are very real. And I'll often see lots of photos, or I'll get asked my opinion. Hey, what's wrong with this tree? All right, well, the initial thing is right now you've got this problem, XYZ, whatever it is. Okay, so how do I treat that? All right, so you treat that problem with whatever approach it is that you use, sprays, natural remedies, whatever it is. But then you've got to look at it and go backwards and say, okay, so why did that happen? What was the cause of that becoming an issue? Why did I get an infestation? Why did I get a fungal issue on this tree? I've never had one before. Why did I get dieback on these branches? So you start working your way backwards and going, okay, well, it's the health assessment of the tree that I probably should have done a little bit earlier before I did whatever job it was that weakened the tree, that now I'm seeing the impact of it 6 months down the track. And these are the really hard things to put your finger on and get your head around, because it can be something that happened such a long time ago that you're dealing with something 6 months, 12 months later that you can't even remember. You can't work out what the problem was. And for me, my common approach is always to look at the root system of the tree and go, okay, so it's always about repotting for me. Was it done properly? When was it done? And what's been your approach since then? I have a tree coming in to the workshop recently, and it's sick. It's look like it's sort of coming on the way back, but it's treading water. Like it's in that position where it's not excelling, and it's sort of stabilizing, but it's not doing fantastic. And It was okay. Was it repotted? Yes, it was. Okay. All right. So when was it repotted? A couple of weeks ago. All right. Well, that's well out of the zone timing that I would repot that type of tree, because the tree woke up from dormancy, had its growth period. Then you've come in and you've cut off all the new roots to repot it, and you put it back into the pot, tied in beautifully, nice soil, nice. All the rest of the approach was right, but the timing was out. So therefore, you've got a tree that was struggling, that's now had all its new root system cut off, and it's struggling a little bit more. So there's a downside to it. All right, so let's ask some more questions. Fertilizing. Has it been fertilized this year? This growing season in spring? No, it hasn't. Okay, so what have you been doing? I've been giving it sea salt. All right, well, sea salt contains no nitrogen. It's a health of the tree, but it's not going to provide anything to the tree for growth. No. Okay. Well, how often did you sea salt it? I've given it once during the spring period. So you've got a tree which was struggling, which then had some pretty severe work done on it outside of the correct season. Hadn't been boosted up, hadn't been fed, hadn't been maintained. But it was okay. Well, how do I fix this problem? It's okay. The problem, you've created the problem. By doing these things to the tree, by getting involved with the tree at the wrong period of time, you've really put it under a lot of stress. And what you're seeing now is the impact of that stress. So what you have to do now is you have to manage that tree and the environment that it's in, so you can minimize that stress. And considering that we're heading towards the most stressful time of the year, the summer period, you've really got some work ahead of you. You've got a tree that you've got to try and build up and put into an artificial spring for a long period of time, where you're sheltering it from extremes of heat, wind, and we've got cold weather, we've got hot weather. It flicks in Melbourne so fast that you've got so much to try and manage that it's not an easy task for you or for the tree now, because sort of you've let things or done things wrong. And that's where I thought about this part of the podcast, was to talk about it, saying, yes, do something, be on the front foot, make a decision, it doesn't have to be 100% correct. A slightly wrong decision is better than no decision. But always keep in mind that number one priority, absolute number one, is the tree's health. And if you can get the trees, if you can tick that box and say, yes, this tree is vibrant, it is strong, it is healthy, it's looking fantastic, the leaf color, the needle color, that is vibrant. There's a lot happening with this tree. Is the growth around the tree? Look at it all around the whole tree. How's it look? Is it just strong in one area at the apex, and then down low it's got next to nothing? If you look across the whole tree, has it just pushed out a little bit of growth and that's it, it's stopped? Or has it pushed growth everywhere around the tree, and it's sort of, you can see where it's jumping out of its skin at all different points around the tree? You look at it. Does it look like it's doing well? Is the leaf, is there veining on the leaf? Has it got discoloration? Look at the inner areas. Has it started to die back yet because it's been too dense on the outside? So do you need to look at things like a partial defoliation? Do you need whatever it is? Just look at it and think, is this tree going to benefit from me taking these steps? And then if you can tick that box and say, yes, the tree looks great, that's perfect. Okay. Then number two, do something. Don't be paralyzed. Don't sit there and go, cut, no cut, cut, no cut. Hang on a minute. No, look, I'll just leave it. I'll come back later. Well, what's that going to achieve? You're going to have a little bit later for this thing to get further and further. And like I said, now's the time where, before we get to this hot period, I really want to make sure that I've got my trees really at a point where I can say, okay, you know what, you're in the best position possible to get into summer and just get through it. It's going to be taxing on you. It's going to be taxing on me, but we'll get through it together. And at the other end, we'll get into autumn, and then we'll get into a strength building phase, and we'll be okay. But I can sleep easy at night knowing that I've done all that's required of me with the timing for repotting, with my fertilizing, with my watering, well, except for the wisteria, but making sure that I've got things covered off as much as I possibly can. So when that extremity of heat does kick in, I know my trees are as good as they possibly can be, and that I've made decisions, and that the trees are going to keep taking steps forward, as opposed to somewhere down the track getting a significant setback that's going to break my heart and push the tree to a point that it really doesn't want to be. So the good old fear of doing anything leads to absolutely nothing being done, which is a real problem for a lot of people with bonsai in their collection, in their yard, in their responsibility, in their care. Especially when you're new to it, or you've sort of you can't see the result of what you do year on year on year. Leaving things often seems like a far better approach than not. But there's always people like me you can reach out to sort of ask and get advice from. But that health assessment, that's really something you've got to get your head around, and you'll know when you look at your trees whether they're okay to be worked on, or whether they've got to be given a little bit more of a rest, and allow that growth that we've had the spring period to really boost them up a little bit. And I've also been giving advice that we've got a little bit left in spring in the growth tank. If you sort of haven't fertilised, it's not too late to get out there, liquid feed, do whatever you can just to try and get something into the tree now to try and help it as much as you possibly can. A little bit late is better than nothing at all. So yeah, trees health is number one priority for us all. Okay, so now this was the next part of the podcast. It's got to do with pruning, so I thought, hey, it's the great time. It's what we're talking about at the moment. It's what's being done at the moment. And this was sent to me via email, and we were talking about pruning for ramification. And part of the deciduous series I did a little while back was talking about the clip and grow method, and some of the issues that a lot of people encounter, and a lot of what I come across as well. It's really, really common is pruning of your deciduous trees, where there's a real struggle for pad building. And I see it on all species, pines, anything really. I see it where a lot of the foliage stays out on the extremities of the pad, the shape that you've got, and things are very flattened. So you'll often prune way more than what you need to, and you'll also be taking out the wrong angle of branches. So by that I mean you'll be pruning anything growing down. Of course, that's a given. That's talked about a lot. Prune the down, prune the up. It's the up ones that I have a real problem with, and this is where pad volume becomes a major thing for us when we're working with our trees. And it's something that I know I focus on a hell of a lot. And it is the difference between, you look at something from a show overseas or anywhere, Australia, really nice trees. Where if you look at a display tree in winter, especially I'm focusing primarily on deciduous because they don't hide their structure. Other trees, your natives, your conifers, they use their foliage, or foliage can be used to hide the structure. And deciduous are the only variety, in my opinion, that really show you everything. When they're naked, when they've got no foliage on them, there's nothing to hide. There's nothing that can be hidden. It shows everything, good, bad, ugly. It's all there on display for you. So when you look at those trees and you go, that is amazing. Why doesn't my tree look like that? Like I've got a nice trunk. Yep, a lot of people can grow really nice trunks. I've got the primary branches. The primary branches are in good spots. Like you've either bought it like that or you've developed it like that, and you look at it and go, that's really nice. And the secondary branching, you look at it and go, yep, sure, I've got secondary branching. So the first three stages that I work with are trunk and nabari, primary branches, secondary branches, right? And the very last stage that I work on is ramification. And that's what I'm talking about now. So you can tick off the trunk and say, lovely, primary branches, perfect, exactly where I want them. Look really nice. The taper on them's perfect. The position on the trunk's perfect. They look really nice. Secondary branches, the branches that come off the primary, Yep, they're looking good too. I'm happy with all of that. It's the ramification that you start to struggle with. And I think it's got to do with that old adage of removing the up, removing the down. I see that a hell of a lot. I see trees come into the workshop and they start off looking like a really full, solid tree that's got lots and lots of growth all over it. And I think, that's really nice. Like there's gonna be a beautiful tree here. And then when they start getting pruned, by the time I circle back around, it's like, yeah, sure, you've taken the underneath off, but you've just cut everything that's growing up on the branch as well. So it's the ups that are the ones that get me, because that's where pad volume comes in. That's where you look at a really nice pad and you look at the flat base of it that's had everything removed underneath it. It's the doming of that pad. It's the top part of that pad that gives its volume. Left and right, but back to front on that pad. So when you look at it from a static photo image or when you're in front of the tree, you'll look along, you'll see the primary branch, you'll see the secondaries, but then the ramification, you'll notice it's not flat. It's definitely not flat. So anything for me on a branch, on a pad that's coming from a 45-degree angle or less, thereabouts. Please don't get your protractor out and measure these things up. But anything that's dead vertical, I'm getting rid of, because the tree will pummel all the energy into that, because it's going to get strong, it's going to get thick, and it's going to grow super fast. So it's going to start looking at destroying structure around that area. So anything that's growing vertical, yes, sure, get rid of it. Anything that's growing back in towards the trunk of the tree, yes, sure, get rid of it. But when they start growing away from the trunk of the tree and they're up on an angle, they are for me the absolute perfect branches when you're building ramification, when you're building pad volume on your trees. So don't follow the old adage of up and down, get rid of, because then all you're left with is left and rights. And left and right is okay when you're talking about primary and secondary. Even the secondary, I'd still have a little bit of angle up on them as well, to sort of bring the pad up a little bit higher. So your primary branch is lower, and then your secondary branches start coming up. So when you look at that pad from underneath, and of course this is only my opinion. There's a million ways to build pads, but for me, I want to look at that pad from underneath. See the primary branch when I'm looking up under the foliage of the tree, even on a conifer or a native. See the primary branch. Look at the secondary branches that have started coming up from that as well. And then the ramification starts to build up from that. So your ramification isn't constantly building left and right and creating a big saucer, a big plate. It's starting to build up and above. And that's normally when you start building a tree structure, whatever it is, you're 1 to 2, one branch divides into 2. When you start working with that structure, it feels very flat. And it will be very flat. So primary branch, secondary branches, there might be a little bit of up and down with it, but pretty much it's starting to spread and give you your top-down shape of the pad that you're looking for. But the next step, the most critical step, and this is where trees start to really excel, is to build pad volume. It's the up volume on the pad, not just the left and right, not just looking down from the top of the tree going, okay, yes, I've got my nice pad shape that I want, whatever it is, a semicircle or whatever shape it is that you're going for on that pad. Then when you look at it from the side, you're looking at that pad and it's coming straight at you. That's when you want to start seeing the pad building from the front up to the middle and down towards the back, but also from the middle of the pad down to the right side and down to the left side. And that's where those branches come into play, the up branches, the up angle branches, the volume branches that we get for our pads. So you may think they've got to get quite long in that center section. They don't. Step one is to keep the branches that are growing up on a 45, prune them back to the second, if it's an alternate leaf pattern, second or third leaf. If it's a pairing leaf like a maple, then cut back to the first pair, of course. Or if it's a pine, just keep the single bud up into that area. Then when you decandle, when you cut back, when it grows again next, then those buds that you've kept, they'll be going up and growing on a 45-degree angle as well. So they'll continue to build the volume on those pads. And it might be that you might have one that's sort of more vertical and one's slightly less vertical. So one might be at the, say, 45 degree and the other one might be at a 30 degree. Perfect. Keep them both, because that's the volume that you're going to want to build. If you look at a pad that's been cut in half on the side, as you look along that branch, you'll see the lowest point will be the primary branch. Then the next highest point will be the secondary branches that are starting to come up. Then the ramification will sit up on top of those secondary branches. So you're starting to build volume up as well as out and across the pads with the angle that you're choosing based on the position of the branch within that pad structure. So it's really important that we do use clip and grow, which is not wiring, which is bud selection based on the direction that branch is starting to grow. But you want to make sure that they're growing at an angle that's going to be conducive to or beneficial to the pad volume in the space that you're working. I always use my hand. Like, I'll cup my hand over and push my knuckles up. So my palm is down, my knuckles are up, and my fingers are down. That is the sort of shape from the tree out towards the edge of the tip of the branch. That's the shape of the pad that I work towards. So any branches that are growing in that angle across the branch, across that primary or across the secondaries, then I will definitely keep those, because I know that as the tree develops year on year on year, first year it might be just a little bit of volume off the pad. The second year, it's a bit more. And the third year, it's a lot more than that. And I'm really mindful of that bud conveyor, that eventually those branches, that 1 to 2, that division, that not only the length of the pad's going to start getting too long, but the branches that are in closer that are giving me my volume, they're going to start getting too tall. So I need to make sure that every time I'm pruning and working, it's going to get longer and elongate and push out a bit further with the 1 to 2, and the structure's going to start building. But I've got to always have that budding on the interior section of each one of those little ramification branches that I've got. So when it does get too long, I can cut it back and continue the pad shape that I want. I don't want my, not only the pads to get too far away from the tree, but I don't want them getting too thick and too tall as well. I want to keep them within the realms of the design or the pad shape that I've chosen for that tree. Deciduous trees, being mindful that they're very different to our natives and to the conifers. They only take about 1,000 years to build nice ramifications. So don't be hard on yourself. Of all my trees in my collection, every year I look at the deciduous and I think that ramification could be better. It can improve, and I love them. I really do. I think that they're a real challenge, and their growth pattern is lovely. Their structuring's fantastic, and you see a good one and think that's great, but it's the never-ending journey. Don't ever expect it to be finished, and if you do, give it one more year, because where it's at now, if you think that's as good as it's going to get, in one more year it's going to be better, and then the year after it'll get better again, because it's that division, that 1 to 2. So you've got 1,000 tiny fine branches on the tree this year, give or take. You've got 2,000 next year, and the year after it's 4,000. So it just never seems to finish rolling. But most common mistake with building ramification on your trees is to flatten things out constantly. If you've got branches, your secondary branches at the moment, you've got them wide out to be left and right, left and right, left and right, and it's sort of like becoming a big fan. Look for some of those ones that are a little bit closer back into the trunk and see if you can wire them up and over to sit over another branch. All right, so you start to build the pad volume by bringing in a branch that maybe you'd pushed out to one side of the pad, wire that back in and try and bring that back in, and then start pruning it so you're keeping some of those upper, the 45s and forward on the smaller branches that start to develop, and you'll be amazed that it'll start to take shape, and your trees will start going to the next level. Same as with your natives, I find that they're often pruned to be a flat saucer. Keep the up and outs. Up and outs are my favourite branches, because they're the ones that give you that full silhouette. That really nice, especially around the apex. It's talk about building apexes as being complex. It's not. Apex is normally the strongest part of the tree, and it should grow the most. So you will find that it's going to be going to be pushing buds and pushing branches. It's the selection of which ones you keep. So, they don't always have to go left and right. They don't always have to flatten out. They can sort of be up and out. And as you get closer towards the peak of the apex, those vertical branches are going to become integral to the volume of the apex of the tree. So that simplistic olden rule of get rid of the ups, get rid of the downs doesn't always apply. Not when you're building really good structure. The 45s and out far more applicable to building really good ramified structure than the flat left and right, so lateral growth on the branches. So hopefully that's helpful. And Rob, thanks very much for shooting out, mate. If anyone else has got any questions, I'm always here. Let me know. All right, let's wrap this baby up. This is episode 46 of season 7 of the podcast. Gee, that's a lot of episodes. It's the highlight of my week though. Preparing for this takes a lot of effort. So this is a shout out to the subscribers. Thank you very much for continuing to support the show. I do dearly appreciate it and love you all. If you are thinking about supporting the show, then please do. In the show notes, there's a link to become a subscriber for a very, very measly amount, but it keeps the show on the air, as they say. All right, so let's wrap it up with saying we are in the throes of the end of spring. Hopefully it feels like it where you are. It certainly doesn't feel like it where I am. Still haven't transitioned to wearing shorts every day of the week, but hopefully that's not far away. I'm looking forward to some warm weather, to be honest. So with that, what you're watering. As I said last week, work to your environment. It's really, really important. Super, super important to make sure that you're playing it day by day, hour by hour. It changes so fast, and getting caught out now can be disastrous. Weeding, oh my God, spring weeds, they never seem to leave me alone. It's a continual thing. So get on top of it now, because they will be stealing resources from your bonsai. And which reminds me, last minute feed for your trees. If you think that they'll get a benefit from it, if it hasn't kicked into high gear for warm weather just yet, then I would definitely be doing it. A nice dunk in some liquid fertilizer. Tea bags probably not long enough for them to get a real boost out of it, but a nice liquid feed now might be what they need just to get them through the next little short period before spring says goodbye. Pruning now before summer is definitely a good thing to do. Make sure that you're getting back to that hardened off foliage before you start getting flogged with some warm weather, and start thinking about summer. Summer's just around the corner. But so before I move on from the pruning side of things, the sacrifice branches that I talked about as well, short, long term, whatever. Before you go lopping back every single branch on the tree to make it look pretty, just see if there's going to be a benefit for a short term sacrifice branch to really just pick up the tree's strength and vitality and health. Or longer term, would it help with the trunk development? Would it help with the taper or primary branches? Is your lower branch thinner than your upper branches? If that's the case, then option one is you can look at some removal up the top of the tree, but it might be that you can just look at sacrifice branching from the lower branch to allow that to thicken, to become more significant than those upper branches. So that's just the thing before you do it. But that health assessment first, please. That's health assessment is priority one before you start cutting anything off. But yes, like I was saying, summer is just around the corner, so it's definitely going to become a focus for where things are at. If you haven't got a watering system, it might be time to start seriously knuckling down and thinking about what's going to happen on those days when you're not there, when it's you're at work or holidays or whatever you got planned coming up, even Christmas lunch with the family. Is it going to be a hot day? Is it going to be cold? What are your plans going to be for when you can't be there to make sure your trees get what they need? It's nice to think about it now, so you're not caught by surprise and make rash decisions somewhere in the future. Anyway, thanks for listening in. I love you all as always, and I do appreciate the support that I get. Reach out if I can help you with anything, and let's see you next week with another episode of the Bonsai Stuff Podcast. Scott Martin, thanks for listening in, and as always, happy bonsai. Make sure you stay in touch and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and as always, happy bonsai.